Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's my pleasure and privilege to be here and speaking in front of such a distinguished audience. And at the outset, I'd like to thank the Journalists and Writers Foundation, especially Hussein Hurmali, whom I met yesterday, and he actually handed me some books to read, which I'm going to read on the flight back. And the Peace Island Institute, Mr. Mehmet, and also Galmis Khan, who's been so interactive as far as the speeches were concerned, going back and forth, and the communication is concerned. What I want to drift apart and talk a little differently and come back to sustainable, and I promise to stay within my timeline, is why I'm here and what's my story, what brings me here. It's actually thanks to a gentleman who's sitting here called Mehmet Ali Shekhar. Ali, if you can wave your hand, and I will weave it into a story format. And the journey began because he heads the Turkish Indian Chamber of Commerce in India. And I met him about 10 years back because I had a love for Rumi, and he managed my trip to Turkey. And when I went there and I visited, and I'm sure worldwide everybody's inspired by Rumi's teaching and secular aspects, and that's how we connected for peace, harmony, to how I'm interconnecting the dots to business. And the journey was then finally we connected for business. And it's unusual, about 2 years back, President Obama has a phenomenal program called Select USA, and that's the first time India, Turkey, and USA were talking in one forum. So there was a Turkish and Indian delegation which went to US, Washington, DC, and we were speaking about investment opportunities. And here I would like to again cite an example that how this translates to business. And ultimately we could speak about sustainable development and every esoteric idea in this room of intellectuals, but unless we don't have the funding, none of us can do that. And that brings me to the point of public-private partnership. And one of the success stories which came out of the networking also relationship with Turkey, India, and US is just 4 days back before I came to New York, there was a sustainable or rather renewable energy conference happening in Delhi, and our former ambassador, he's from that same place called Greater Noida, Ashokji. It was a fabulously held conference, and there I met the Turkish gentleman who Ali introduced me to, and who's now wanting to invest $100 million on a sustainable project of solar energy. So here's a Turkish company who does solar plants supported by a Chinese company, and we have met somewhere else. We were talking in Delhi last week to talk about investment. So I told him that this is the Indian government is doing so many things to promote that. And he said, listen, how would you make your presence felt? He said, not a problem. I have told 2 of my people who are with me to go and whisper around that I'm going to invest $100 million for various projects. The projects, technology, people will find me. So I think the key is resources for funding, because without that, we're not going anywhere. And that's the role. And again, I met the gentleman from Albania yesterday, and he immediately said, you're looking at Indo-US opportunities, why don't you look at Albania? So I think the purpose when we get together on an international platform is also to find a way of networking. Then I met another gentleman who's from Germany, but who's doing work in New York, and that was at last night's networking dinner. Moving on to what's India's goals. So and also India and the Prime Minister Modi has been in the news over the last couple of days, because coincidentally his visit also yesterday he met President Obama, and one of the key aspects he's touching upon is sustainable development and energy, climate, and all those aspects. And also prior to that, he was in California, and a couple of days back he met, besides other dignitaries, Elon Musk, who's the founder of Tesla, and he's making a lot of news. And one of the key factors Modi mentioned to the chairman of Tesla was, listen, India is going to grow. We're looking at solar development, but we need battery storage. Unless we don't have battery storage, we could develop and harness solar energy during the daytime, but we need battery storage because many of the villages which require electricity are off-grid. And unless we don't have the batteries, we can't do anything about it. And in that sense, just to tell you, India, it's a developing country, but still 300 million people don't have access to electricity. And one of the Modi government's plan is towards a greener planet and greener India is to see that every village and every Indian in India has access to electricity. And again, I'll bring it to the point of microgrids in solar development is being planned so that every villages get microgrids. They're not connected with the main grid and still have energy. So that will lead to more students being able to study, education increase, and also access, because without a mobile being charged, you cannot get connected to the global world. And as before, the keynote speaker mentioned the use and power of technology, and especially India is growing phenomenally as far as mobile technology is concerned. And earlier our landline rates were very low till mobile came, and I think there are more mobile phones than the population of India at this moment of time. As far as India is concerned, that's the growth of mobile phones, smartphones, basic phones. And also the second growth of technology was satellite TV in India when there was terrestrial television, and there was a only Indian channel broadcaster called Doordarshan, but it all changed when the satellite came in. So I think technology is going to play a major role. And here also, the Modi government and the Indian government has set up a very aggressive target of having 200 gigawatts of installed capacity of renewable energy and solar in specific, and he's going to include wind and other aspects to be ready by 2020. It's an aggressive target, but nevertheless, and again the key point I want to stress out is the only way we are going to achieve that is by getting funding. And the funding is going to happen by public-private partnership. And the government, having understood the examples from other countries, have actually introduced, so I'll just give you an example. So for private investors coming to invest in India, they're getting into a purchase power agreement. So they would say, okay, you get in the money, you invest. Let's say, take an example of $100 million investment in a solar project. They will ensure that over the next 30 years, they will give you an X value per unit over the next 30 years. So and which is bankable by the government of India. So the money is safe, and that will encourage worldwide investors. And we're already seeing investors from New Zealand, USA, Canada, all the developed countries in the world actually paving a way to look at the opportunity in India. So that's one. I talked about solar. The same example, or I can go on talking about till this, as the cows come home, about water sustainability. India, and one of the key projects, again, the Modi government has, is the Clean Ganga project. The Ganga river is considered as a very sacred river with the Hindu community, and he's got his mandate, and it's a lot of filth in the river because of various reasons. So again, there is water sustainability. There is another aspect of wastewater management, because as we know, and in fact, one of the couple of very important Bollywood producer and an international producer is making a movie, and it's going to be on water. And because he's mentioned, and I'm sure everybody knows, that the next war, they say, is going to be fought on water. And India, some of the states are already facing a drought situation. So water sustainability, wastewater management, recycling, that is another trend which we are encouraging. And we're also encouraging public-private partnership and to the global community to come and invest in India. The third most important aspect, India, as you know, is a growing population, 130 billion people and growing. And one of the other aspects which our government is introducing is called smart cities, as the word smart city is concerned. And they have shortlisted about 100 smart cities, and work has begun on few of them. I'll give you an example of a smart city in Gujarat called Dholera. And it's, again, the project management is done by an American company, and they have very aggressive goals. And again, they are encouraging private investors and large public companies and companies like Boeing and all that to be anchor clients over there, because once they come in, then the ancillary units come in. But the key factor is not of private enterprise profiting, but profiting along with public participation. And finally, the smart city concept is going to help, because if the population is growing, we don't have access to clean water, sanitation, all the other related issues which population growth brings it together. And the smart city concept is based on that there'll be open parks, proper water sustainability, water available, 24/7 sanitation, and all these aspects. So I just wanted to share what's happening as far as we are concerned from an India perspective, and the story which we are following, and for sustainable development, and tons have been spoken. If you just Google sustainable development plus India, I think just the last 5 days, so much water has flown under the bridge, where the Prime Minister, his whole team, the Power Minister was here just 4 days back, and they had an Indo-US energy dialogue, and which is talking about how to follow the Kyoto Protocol and also follow all the norms, and more importantly, have a sustainable development and ensure that every Indian has access to electricity, water, and there is an inclusive growth. And that's the message I want to leave behind. And of course, I would, in conclusion, like to also thank especially the Turkish organization called Tiki again, TUSCON, and I've been very inspired by Fethullah Gulen, who's the honorary president of the Journalists and Writers Foundation. And thank you for giving me that book, which is written by him. And hopefully, and the book is on peace and harmony. And we will continue to work closely with your organizations to ensure that peace, harmony, sustainability is maintained in times to come. Thank you very much.